Let's dive into the ancient roots of cannabis in early civilizations. Cannabis sativa, you see, has a long and storied history with humankind. This relationship stretches back thousands of years. It's not just a modern plant of interest, rather its roots are deeply embedded in ancient cultures across the globe. Some of the earliest evidence of its use comes from ancient China. Emperor Shen Nung, often revered as the father of Chinese medicine, documented its properties around 2737 BC. He recommended cannabis for various ailments, including gout, rheumatism, and even absent-mindedness. It was a key part of his pharmacopoeia, a collection of medicinal plants. This shows that from its earliest known history, cannabis was seen as a plant with significant healing potential, not just a simple fiber crop. The use of cannabis wasn't limited to medicine in ancient China. The plant's fibers were incredibly valuable for making practical goods. Early Chinese farmers cultivated cannabis to produce strong ropes, durable textiles for clothing, and even paper. Archaeological findings have uncovered hemp fibers in ancient pottery and burial sites, suggesting its widespread use in daily life. This dual purpose, as both a source of medicine and a fundamental industrial material, made it a cornerstone of early Chinese society. Its versatility was recognized and harnessed long before it became a subject of global debate. The plant was a simple yet essential part of the fabric of civilization, woven into both the spiritual and material worlds of the people. In ancient India, cannabis took on a deeply spiritual and cultural significance. The plant is mentioned in the Vedas, sacred Hindu texts dating back to as early as 1500 BC. It was described as one of 5 sacred plants, a source of joy and a liberator. Known as bhang, it was often consumed as a milky drink during religious festivals and ceremonies. The god Shiva is frequently associated with cannabis, believed to have used it for meditation and to achieve deeper spiritual insight. This connection with divinity elevated the plant's status far beyond a mere recreational substance. It was considered a sacred tool for connecting with the spiritual realm and a gift from the gods to humanity. This tradition of using cannabis for spiritual and medicinal purposes has continued in India for centuries. Ayurvedic medicine, the traditional Indian system of healing, has long incorporated cannabis to treat a wide range of conditions. It was used as an analgesic for pain, an anti-inflammatory agent, and a remedy for digestive issues. The cultural acceptance of cannabis was so ingrained that its use was a normal part of life for many, from holy men seeking enlightenment to common people celebrating festivals. The historical context in India provides a powerful counter-narrative to the modern stigma, showing a society where the plant was revered, respected, and integrated into the very core of its spiritual and daily existence. Now let's take a closer look at the plant's chemistry, focusing on THC and CBD. The Cannabis Sativa plant is quite the complex chemical factory, producing hundreds of different compounds. Among these, the most well-known are called cannabinoids. These compounds are what give the plant its unique effects on the human body. The 2 most famous and studied cannabinoids are tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, and cannabidiol, or CBD. THC is the primary psychoactive component of cannabis. This means it's the compound responsible for the high or euphoric feeling that users experience. It works by interacting with the body's endocannabinoid system, specifically binding to receptors in the brain and central nervous system. This interaction influences mood, perception, memory, and consciousness, creating the signature effects associated with marijuana use. On the other side of the cannabinoid spectrum is CBD. Unlike THC, cannabidiol is not psychoactive. This means it doesn't produce the high that THC does. For this reason, CBD has gained immense popularity for its potential therapeutic benefits without the intoxicating side effects. It also interacts with the body's endocannabinoid system, but its mechanism is more complex and less direct than that of THC. Instead of binding strongly to the main cannabinoid receptors, CBD seems to modulate them and influence other receptor systems in the body. This subtle interaction is believed to be the source of its wide-ranging medicinal properties, making it a subject of intense scientific research and interest. The discovery of THC and CBD was a major scientific breakthrough. Israeli chemist Dr. Raphael Mechoulam and his team first isolated and synthesized THC in 1964. This discovery was monumental. It opened the door to understanding how cannabis affects the human body on a molecular level. Before this, scientists knew cannabis had effects, but they didn't know which specific chemical was responsible. By identifying THC, Dr. Mechoulam provided a target for future research. This allowed scientists to study its structure, how it works in the brain, and its potential for both therapeutic use and harm. His work laid the foundation for virtually all modern cannabis science and medicine. Following the discovery of THC, researchers began to explore the other compounds in the plant, leading to a greater understanding of CBD. The interplay between THC and CBD is a fascinating area of study known as the entourage effect. This theory suggests that the cannabinoids and other compounds in cannabis, like terpenes, which create the plant's aroma, work together synergistically. In other words, the therapeutic effect of the whole plant is greater than the sum of its individual parts. For example, some studies suggest that CBD can moderate the psychoactive effects of THC, reducing anxiety or paranoia that some users experience. This concept highlights the importance of whole plant medicine over isolated compounds. Moving on to the therapeutic promise of cannabis, the medicinal applications are vast and are supported by a growing body of scientific evidence. For many years, patient testimonies were the primary source of information about its benefits. People reported using it to manage chronic pain, reduce nausea from chemotherapy, and control seizures. Today, clinical research is beginning to catch up with these anecdotal claims. One of the most well-established uses of medicinal cannabis is for the treatment of chronic pain. Cannabinoids like THC and CBD have been shown to have analgesic properties. They can help reduce pain from conditions like neuropathy, arthritis, and multiple sclerosis, offering an alternative to traditional opioid painkillers, which carry a high risk of addiction and overdose. Another significant area of research is in the field of neurology. Cannabis has shown remarkable promise in treating certain forms of epilepsy. The story of Charlotte Figi, a young girl with a severe form of epilepsy called Dravet syndrome, brought this to international attention. She experienced a dramatic reduction in her seizures after using a high CBD, low THC cannabis extract. This led to the development and FDA approval of Epidiolex, a prescription medication derived from CBD for treating rare seizure disorders. This was a landmark moment, as it marked the first time a plant-derived cannabinoid drug received approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, validating its medical legitimacy. Beyond pain and epilepsy, cannabis is being explored for a wide range of other conditions. Cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy often suffer from severe nausea, vomiting, and loss of appetite. Synthetic THC medications like dronabinol, also known as Marinol, have been approved for decades to help alleviate these symptoms. Many patients, however, report that smoked or vaporized cannabis provides more immediate and effective relief. Research is also investigating the potential of cannabinoids to treat mental health disorders such as anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, and depression. While the results are mixed and more research is needed, some studies suggest that CBD in particular may have anti-anxiety properties without the risks associated with traditional psychiatric medications. Despite the growing evidence, significant barriers to research remain. The classification of cannabis as a Schedule I drug in the United States, and similar restrictions in other countries make it very difficult for scientists to conduct large-scale clinical trials. This classification implies that the plant has a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use, a stance that is increasingly at odds with scientific findings. As legal frameworks slowly evolve, researchers hope for greater access to the plant. This would allow them to conduct the rigorous, placebo-controlled studies needed to fully understand the risks and benefits of cannabis as a medicine, and to develop standardized, safe, and effective treatments for patients in need. Finally, let's explore cannabis in the 20th century, where it transformed from an ancient medicine and industrial crop into a powerful symbol of counterculture and rebellion. This shift began in the early 1900s, especially in the United States. Its use was often associated with marginalized communities, including jazz musicians and Mexican immigrants. This association helped fuel a moral panic. Newspapers ran sensationalized stories linking marijuana to crime, insanity, and social decay. This propaganda campaign, led by figures like Harry Anslinger of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, successfully demonized the plant in the public eye. It was no longer seen as a helpful medicine but as a dangerous killer weed that threatened the fabric of American society and its youth. The criminalization of cannabis in the 1930s only served to push it further into the underground, where it was embraced by a budding counterculture. The Beat Generation writers of the 1950s, like Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg, wrote about their experiences with marijuana. They saw it as a tool for expanding consciousness and rejecting the conformity of post-war society. For them, smoking cannabis was an act of intellectual and spiritual rebellion. It was a way to break free from the rigid social norms of the time and explore new ways of thinking, creating, and living. This set the stage for the plant's explosion into mainstream youth culture in the following decade. The 1960s cemented the status of cannabis as the ultimate symbol of the counterculture movement. For the hippie generation, smoking marijuana was a political statement. It was a clear rejection of the Vietnam War, consumerism, and the conservative values of their parents' generation. The plant became synonymous with peace, love, and anti-authoritarianism. Music festivals like Woodstock were gatherings where cannabis use was open and widespread, a shared ritual that bonded a generation together in their quest for a different kind of world. Musicians like Bob Dylan, the Beatles, and Jimi Hendrix sang openly about their use of the drug, further popularizing it and weaving it into the cultural soundtrack of the era. This cultural significance continued to evolve in the decades that followed. In the 1970s and 80s, reggae music from Jamaica, with its deep spiritual connection to ganja through the Rastafari movement, brought a new dimension to the plant's cultural identity. Artists like Bob Marley became global ambassadors for both the music and the herb. In later years, hip-hop culture also embraced cannabis, with artists like Snoop Dogg and Cypress Hill making it a central theme of their music and public personas. Through music, film, and art, cannabis has remained a potent symbol of defiance, creativity, and alternative lifestyles, even as it moves closer to mainstream acceptance. The legal history of cannabis is a story of prohibition, politics, and slow, incremental change. In the United States, the tide turned against cannabis in the early 20th century. Fueled by a mixture of racial prejudice, economic interests, and sensationalist propaganda, a powerful anti-cannabis movement emerged. This culminated in the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. While this act did not explicitly outlaw the plant, it imposed such heavy taxes and strict regulations on its cultivation, sale, and possession, that it effectively became illegal. This federal law set a precedent that would dominate cannabis policy in the United States and influence international treaties for the next several decades, pushing the plant into the shadows of the black market. The era of global prohibition was solidified in 1961 with the signing of the United Nations Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. This international treaty classified cannabis alongside heroin in Schedule 4, the most restrictive category. This classification was reserved for drugs deemed to have a high potential for abuse and little to no therapeutic value. Signatory nations were obligated to enact strict laws prohibiting the production, trade, and use of cannabis for non-medical and non-scientific purposes. This treaty effectively globalized the American model of cannabis prohibition, creating a unified international front against the plant, and setting the stage for the so-called war on drugs that would escalate in the coming years. For decades, this strict prohibitionist stance remained largely unchallenged. However, by the late 20th century, public and political attitudes began to shift. The Netherlands pioneered a policy of decriminalization in the 1970s, tolerating the sale of small amounts of cannabis in coffee shops. This was a pragmatic approach designed to separate the soft drug market from the hard drug market. The major turning point in the United States came in 1996, when California passed Proposition 215, becoming the first state to legalize cannabis for medical use. This landmark decision created a direct conflict between state law and federal law, sparking a nationwide debate and inspiring other states to follow suit. The 21st century has seen an unprecedented wave of cannabis law reform across the globe. In 2012, Colorado and Washington became the first U.S. states to legalize cannabis for adult recreational use, a move that would have been unthinkable just a decade earlier. In 2018, Canada became the second country in the world, after Uruguay, to fully legalize and regulate cannabis nationwide. Many other countries in Europe, Latin America, and beyond have since decriminalized possession or established medical cannabis programs. This global trend signals a major departure from the prohibitionist consensus of the 20th century, moving towards a new era of regulation, taxation, and public health-focused policies. The legalization of cannabis has created a booming new industry with significant economic impacts. As states and countries move from prohibition to regulation, they are unlocking a powerful engine for job creation and economic growth. The legal cannabis market encompasses a wide range of businesses, from cultivation and processing to distribution and retail. This seed-to-sale supply chain creates jobs for growers, lab technicians, bud tenders, security personnel, and marketing professionals. Beyond the plant-touching businesses, there is also a vast ancillary market for lawyers, accountants, software developers, and equipment manufacturers who service the industry, multiplying the economic benefits. One of the most compelling economic arguments for legalization is the potential for substantial tax revenue. Governments can levy excise taxes on cannabis sales, similar to taxes on alcohol and tobacco. These tax dollars can then be used to fund public services like schools, infrastructure, public health programs, and substance abuse treatment. In states like Colorado and California, cannabis tax revenues have generated billions of dollars since legalization. This provides a new and reliable source of income for state and local governments, which can be particularly valuable during times of economic uncertainty. It also represents money that was previously flowing untaxed into the black market. Legalization also leads to significant savings in the criminal justice system. The enforcement of cannabis prohibition is incredibly expensive. It costs taxpayers billions of dollars each year for police, courts, and prisons to arrest, prosecute, and incarcerate people for nonviolent cannabis offenses. When cannabis is legalized, law enforcement resources can be redirected to address more serious crimes. This not only saves money but also helps to reduce the burden on an overstretched justice system. Furthermore, it ends the criminalization of thousands of people, particularly from minority communities who have been disproportionately affected by drug laws, allowing them to participate fully in the economy. The economic potential of cannabis extends beyond domestic markets. As more countries legalize, a global cannabis trade is beginning to emerge. Countries with favorable climates and regulatory frameworks like Canada and certain Latin American nations are positioning themselves as major exporters of cannabis products. This creates opportunities for international investment and trade agreements. The development of a legitimate, regulated global market for cannabis could generate billions of dollars in economic activity, creating a new and dynamic sector in the international economy. This green rush is attracting entrepreneurs and investors from all over the world, eager to get in on the ground floor of a rapidly expanding industry. While much of the modern focus is on the cannabinoid-rich flower of the cannabis plant, its industrial cousin, hemp, holds immense potential as an environmental solution. Hemp is a variety of Cannabis Sativa that is grown specifically for its fiber and seeds, and it contains negligible amounts of THC. For thousands of years it was one of the most important agricultural crops in the world. However, its association with its psychoactive relative led to its prohibition in many countries, halting its cultivation and innovation for decades. Today, as laws change, hemp is making a comeback, and its environmental benefits are more relevant than ever in a world facing climate change and resource depletion. Hemp is a remarkably sustainable and versatile crop. It grows quickly, matures in just a few months, and requires very little water, especially when compared to crops like cotton. It also naturally resists pests, reducing or eliminating the need for harmful pesticides and herbicides. The plant's deep root system is excellent for the soil. It helps to prevent soil erosion and can even clean contaminated soil through a process called phytoremediation, absorbing heavy metals and toxins from the ground. This makes hemp an ideal rotation crop for farmers, as it can regenerate and improve the health of the soil for future plantings, contributing to more sustainable agricultural practices. The applications for industrial hemp are incredibly diverse, offering green alternatives to many unsustainable products. The plant's strong fibers can be used to make textiles, paper, and building materials. Hemp fabric is more durable and breathable than cotton, and it requires far less water and chemicals to produce. Hemp can also be used to create hempcrete, a lightweight carbon-negative building material that is an excellent insulator. By using hemp to build our homes, we can reduce our reliance on concrete, which is a major source of carbon emissions. The woody core of the hemp stalk can also be processed into biodegradable plastics, offering a solution to the global plastic pollution crisis. Beyond its fibers, hemp seeds are a nutritional powerhouse. They are rich in protein, healthy fats like omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, and essential vitamins and minerals. Hemp seeds can be eaten raw, pressed into oil, or ground into protein powder, making them a valuable food source. The entire plant can also be converted into biofuel, providing a renewable energy source that could help reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. The revival of hemp cultivation offers a pathway to a more circular and sustainable economy, where one plant can provide us with food, clothing, shelter, and energy, all while healing the planet. The perception of cannabis sativa is undergoing a profound and rapid transformation around the world. For most of the 20th century, the plant was widely demonized, portrayed as a dangerous narcotic that led to addiction, madness, and crime. This image, crafted by decades of propaganda and prohibitionist policies, is now beginning to crumble under the weight of scientific evidence and social change. The forbidden flower is slowly being unveiled, revealing a complex plant with a rich history and a multifaceted future. Public opinion has shifted dramatically, with a majority of people in many countries now supporting some form of legalization, whether for medical or adult recreational use. This change in perception is driven by several factors. The growing body of scientific research into the plant's therapeutic potential is a major contributor. As credible studies validate the medicinal benefits of cannabinoids for conditions like epilepsy, chronic pain, and multiple sclerosis, it becomes increasingly difficult to justify the plant's classification as a substance with no medical value. The personal stories of patients who have found relief with cannabis have also played a powerful role in changing hearts and minds. These testimonials have humanized the issue, shifting the conversation from criminality to compassion and patient rights, making the case for reform more compelling. The economic success of legal cannabis markets has also helped to reshape public and political attitudes. The creation of jobs, the generation of substantial tax revenue, and the reduction in criminal justice costs provide tangible benefits that are hard to ignore. When people see that a regulated cannabis market can operate safely and contribute positively to the economy, the fears stoked by prohibitionist rhetoric begin to fade. The normalization of cannabis in popular culture, from television shows to mainstream news coverage, has also made the plant less intimidating and more familiar to the general public, further eroding the stigma that has surrounded it for so long. Looking to the future, the potential of cannabis sativa seems almost limitless. As legal barriers continue to fall, we can expect an explosion in scientific research, leading to a deeper understanding of its many compounds and their effects on the human body. This could result in new, targeted medicines for a wide range of illnesses. The revival of industrial hemp promises to revolutionize industries from construction to fashion with sustainable alternatives. While challenges remain, including ensuring social equity and developing sensible regulations, the global trend is clear. The perception of cannabis is evolving from that of a dangerous drug to that of a valuable commodity, a versatile medicine, and a symbol of personal freedom.